Hello and welcome to the session on eclectic tendencies in education. Philosophies of education. The word education is used sometimes to signify the activity, process or enterprise of educating or being educated, and sometimes to signify the discipline or field of study taught in schools of education that concerns itself with this activity, process or enterprise. As an activity or process, education may be formal or informal, private or public, individual or social, but it always consists in cultivating dispositions, abilities, skills, knowledge, beliefs, attitudes, values and character traits by certain methods. As a discipline, education studies or reflects on the activity or enterprise by asking questions about its aims, methods, effects, forms, history, course, value and relations to society. Definition. The philosophy of education may be either the philosophy or the process of education or the philosophy of the discipline of education. That is, it may be part of the discipline in the sense of being concerned with the aims, forms, methods or results of the process of educating or being educated, or it may be metadisciplinary in the sense of being concerned with the concepts, aims and methods of the discipline. However, even in the latter case, it may be thought of as part of the discipline, just as metaphilosophy is thought of as a part of philosophy, although the philosophy of science is not regarded as a part of science. Historically, philosophies of education have usually taken the first form, but under the influence of analytical philosophy, they have sometimes taken the second. In the first form, philosophy of education was traditionally developed by philosophers, for example, Aristotle, Augustine and John Locke, as part of their philosophical systems in the context of their ethical theories. However, in the 20th century, philosophy of education tended to be developed in schools of education in the context of what is called foundations of education, thus linking it with other parts of the discipline of education, educational history, psychology and sociology, rather than with other parts of philosophy. It was also developed by writers such as Paul Goodman and Robert M. Hutchins, who were neither professional philosophers nor members of schools of education. As there are many kinds of philosophy, many philosophies and many ways of philosophizing, so there are many kinds of educational philosophy and ways of doing it. In a sense, there is no such thing as the philosophy of education. There are only philosophies of education that can be classified in many different ways, and in this particular section we are trying to analyze the eclectic philosophy in education. Eclectic tendency. The word eclectic, which is an adjective, means deriving things from diverse sources. It is derived from a Greek word eklegon, which means to select. Eclecticism in philosophy is the selection of elements from different systems of thought without regard to possible contradictions between the systems. Eclecticism differs from syncretism, which tries to combine various systems while resolving conflicts. Many Roman philosophers, especially Cicero and the Neoplatonists, were known for eclecticism. Eclecticism among Renaissance humanists who drew from Christian and classical doctrines was followed by a 19th century revival, particularly with French philosopher Victor Cousin, who coined the term and applied it to his own system. In the modern world, the advance of science has brought about a synthesis between all the cultures and ideologies. In the same way, in modern civilization also, various ideals and beliefs unite as a harmonious whole, leaving aside their differences and conflicts. This tendency of synthesis between different ideologies in modern culture and civilization is called eclectic tendency. This tendency emphasizes an attitude of appreciation and acceptance of the merits of the various cultures and civilization of the world, and inspires children to lead a life of smooth adjustment, broad outlook, large-heartedness, sympathy, tolerance, cooperation, and fellow feeling among all the fellow citizens of the world as a whole. Philosophy of life has a powerful impact on education, because eclectic tendency is gaining wider and wider appreciation and acceptance in the life of an individual today. Therefore, the influence of this tendency on education is natural. This is the reason why we see eclectic tendency in modern education also. If John Dewey's definition of education as continuous reorganization and integration of activities and experiences is to be accepted, then sticking to any particular school of philosophical thought, idealism, naturalism, realism, etc., is neither possible nor even desirable. We are living in a fast changing world. Education, if dynamic, has to conform to the changing norms and nuances of life. Instead of being rigid to certain beliefs and ideologies, we have to get inspiration from all philosophies, borrow from each what we feel as functional in the prevailing circumstances, and fuse them into a new philosophy suiting the highest values of life. This harmonious blend of diverse philosophies is called eclectic tendency. It means the pulling together of viewpoints from different philosophies into one comprehensive whole. Sri Aurobindo, Radhakrishnan, Tagore, and Gandhi have advocated an eclectic scheme of education, including physical, moral, and religious education, true to the spirit of Indian culture, in spite of incorporating latest scientific truths. Aurobindo said, "The aim and principles of a true national education is not certainly to ignore modern truth and knowledge, but to take our foundations on our belief, our mind, and our own spirit." Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, while delivering Azad Memorial Lecture, said, "Education is supposed to develop an integrated human being and to prepare young people to perform useful function for society and to take part in collective life." But when that society is changing from day to day, it is difficult to know how to prepare and what to aim at. Thus, Pandit Nehru indirectly outlined the need to make educational philosophy most modern as to meet the needs of present day society, and this needs a harmonious synthesis between all the conflicting factors in various educational philosophies and tendencies. A smooth synthesis between the merits of all the educational ideologies and tendencies is possible through opting for eclectic tendency. Monroe Paul has defined this tendency as follows: "The eclectic tendency is that which seeks the harmonization of principle underlying various tendencies and rationalization of educational practices." By eclectic tendency, we mean a tendency which seeks to achieve a harmonious synthesis between all the conflicting factors in various philosophies and tendencies of education. In other words, to achieve a smooth synthesis between the merits in all the ideologies and tendencies is eclectic tendency. Thus, the eclectic tendency in education implies the tendency to create an admixture of earlier tendencies. At least in the field of science and knowledge, it has become evident that there is nothing entirely new, that even the most recent is a mixture of many earlier elements. The principle of evolution, which is accepted by scientists today, also proves that every new situation is the outcome of a mixture of earlier situations. Hence, in the sphere of education also, people have come to believe that in the curriculum, teaching methods, aims of education, etc., we should achieve a mixture of the past tendencies so as to take advantage of each one. This is the reason why one finds elements of almost all the traditional methods in even the most recent method of teaching. Even in respect of the aims of education, there is a strong inclination in the favor of integration of various aims and finding a synthesized aim. In other spheres also, the adoption of such an attitude is looked at favorably. This is the eclectic tendency in education. It can also be called the tendency of compromise or the completion. Undoubtedly, the eclectic tendency is better than the one-sided view because it is more comprehensive, liberal and extensive. Eclectic tendency in modern education. There is a consensus of different philosophies in the specific aspects of education like aims, curriculum, methods, discipline, etc. Under the influence of eclectic tendency, all the previous ideologies and tendencies are influencing the following aspects of modern education. 1. Aim of education. While in the ultimate aims of education, the schools of philosophy differ from each other, in the proximate aims they do not have variance. None of the educational philosophy denies the child education for individual development and education for social efficiency. According to eclectics, the aim of modern education, by achieving a synthesis of individual and social efficiency, is to create such citizens who develop themselves and bring about social welfare. 2. Curriculum. All the philosophies support life-centered education. Instead of taking a narrow view of curriculum, the eclectics advocate a broad-based view of total experiences. In their curricular program, there is a place for history, social and physical sciences, logic, grammar and rhetoric. So, the curriculum of modern education is flexible. It is constructed keeping into consideration the ever-changing needs of society, broad-based, diversified and many-sided, which envisages in the child the development of essential skills, desirable attitudes and individual and social virtues. 3. Methods of teaching. Today, methods of teaching are being molded and modified according to psychological investigations and findings which advocate the use of self-activities, experiences and observation techniques for effective learning. In other words, methods of teaching are being given scientific basis so as to make them operate according to the rules of natural development of children. 4. Correlation of subjects. Modern education prescribes correlation while teaching various subjects so that children learn knowledge as one whole unit. 5. Importance of subject specialists. The curriculum of modern education is very broad and varied. Only one teacher is not capable to teach all subjects. Hence, need specialists to teach one or a group of allied subjects is receiving due importance these days. 6. Teaching work as a profession. Teaching is a profession. It requires teaching professionals who are competent enough to work effectively. They should be paid proper pay and allowances. 7. Emphasis on the training of teachers. Under the influence of eclectic tendency, more and more teacher training institutions are being opened to provide training to teachers for various grades and levels of education. 8. Place of teacher. In ancient times, a teacher was regarded as a divine being, but now he has been drawn to the position of a friend, philosopher, and guide with a mission to develop children fully and completely. 9. Secular form of education. In ancient and medieval times, provision of education was made by religious institutions, but under the influence of eclectic tendency, modern education has broken off from religious bonds and has become material and worldly. 10. Discipline. Modern education condemns repression or compulsion of any kind for disciplining children. Freedom or free discipline is their key word. Conviction rather than coercion, free discipline rather than imposition, inner urge rather than intimidation to do a thing sum up their theory of discipline. It stimulates a sense of self-discipline among children, which is essential for the development of individual and welfare of society. 11. Place of school. Under the influence of sociological tendency, the function of school is to prepare dynamic citizens to participate in the social activities successfully. As such, school is now regarded as a miniature society to develop dynamic, enterprising, and resourceful citizens. 12. State system of education. In modern times, each state is trying to launch schemes of free, compulsory, and universal education to cater to the educational needs of its citizens. The above discussion makes it crystal clear that modern education has drawn from all the tendencies, namely psychological, scientific, and sociological, to a very great extent, and this process of synthesizing and gainfully imbibing is known as eclectic tendency. Advantages of eclectic approach. In teaching, a person who is interested in reading would collect and select books from diverse resources to fulfill his needs. Same is the theme of this teaching approach. A teacher uses number of methods to achieve his end of effective teaching. It is a common practice that a teacher often follows one specific technique, method, or approach of teaching. He does not mix it with others. The eclectic approach does not imprison him in a circle. It allows him to use of techniques and activities from a range of language teaching approaches and methodologies. In this approach, teacher decides the method of teaching himself. He is free to employ any relevant techniques for his lesson and learners. Several different teaching methods are borrowed and adapted to needs and abilities of learners. Learner's strength and learning style is always kept in mind. Wide range of resources is used to match the curriculum. It is flexible and elastic technique which keeps the needs of learners in mind. An example of material chosen for different subjects may clarify the eclectic technique. Textbook is better for teaching mathematics. Short stories or novels of supreme quality are good for teaching reading, and a workbook is used for teaching spelling. Eclectic approach keeps the learner busy all along the day. It's a good combination of different learning approaches. It's a variety of teaching methods and curricula to accomplish educational goals. It's the most effective technique for small classes and also needs an assistant with a teacher. The role of teacher in this technique is that of a guide as well as entertainer, as he tries to make his lesson interesting. It develops a student emotionally, socially, intellectually, and physically. In learning, in the eclectic method, children are believed to be the unique individuals, and appropriate technique is applied for every single learner. This technique requires curriculum that's creative, innovative, and imaginative. It provides every student an opportunity to grow and develop in quiet natural environment. This approach is heterogeneous and breaks monotony with variety of learning materials, methods, and techniques. It keeps students involved in the learning without stress and fears. They are especially benefited by this technique as they are provided an opportunity to give vent to their emotions. It is the nature of man that he likes change. He wants new and novel ways in every field of work. The same is the case with learning process. Learners always like something new and exciting. This approach is broad and may include every kind of learning activity and saves learner from monotony. It is more appropriate for preschool learning, but not less beneficial in the classrooms. It is helpful in all kinds of skills in stimulating a creative environment and gives confidence to learners. In this approach, children discovers and instill good ways of learning. Above all, this approach gives a chance to our common sense to mold and shape our method according to the circumstances and available materials of teaching aids. Let me summarize the session. In this unit, what we have discussed is eclectic tendencies in education. We know that education is a discipline which should be driven by any kind of philosophy. The history says there was a particular philosophy of education over the periods, and now in the modern education, we see an eclectic tendency which is a harmonious blend of different philosophies. In eclecticism, there is a synthesis of various ideologies. Module 1 of this unit explains what is meant by a philosophy of education, and the second module is about the eclectic tendency. It makes clear that what is meant by eclecticism. Later, the third module discusses the eclectic tendency in modern education. In this, we can see that eclectic tendency influences almost all the aspects of education, like methods of teaching, curriculum, aims of education, etc. Finally, in the last module, we gave a chance to discuss the advantages of eclectic tendency in modern education. We have seen that there are some advantages to this philosophy in the field of teaching as well as in learning. Hope that you can answer the questions given here. 1. What is meant by eclectic tendency? 2. What are the influences of eclectic tendency in various aspects of education? 3. What is Montreux-Paul's definition of eclectic tendency? 4. What are the advantages of eclectic tendency in modern education? Now, you can go through these reference books for further reading and understanding. Educational Theories and Modern Trends by Sharma R.P., Gaint G.N., Modern Trends publication, Ram Prasad, 1965. Educational Thought and Practice by Taneja V.R. Sterling Publishers Private Limited, 1995. Hope that this session was beneficial to you. We can meet again with another topic next time. Take care.